Welcome to this morning on Asake podcast, your daily dose of insightful conversation on current affairs, politics, and social issues. Please share and also follow us on social media at SiteZW. Now, stay tuned to today's episode.
A very good morning to you guys. Welcome to the Friday edition of This Morning on Asake. My name is Brighton. It's nice to wrap up the week with you. Good morning to you, Mafika, this morning.
Good morning, Brighton, and good morning to our guests. Welcome to This Morning on Asake.
But today on the show, we're looking at the youth demand 50% quota system in government positions, man. So there was a breakfast meeting happening in Harare whereby youths attending that meeting were demanding that they get 50% in terms of positions in government, be it ministers, be it deputy ministers, be it PEMSECs. They want to be part of this government. Maybe let's go through the article there.
Okay, so youth demand 50% quota on government. The Women's Academy for Leadership and Political Excellence, WALPE, has petitioned the government demanding increased youth participation in government. WALPE called for a policy that guarantees at least half of all public leadership and decision-making positions to be held by young people. During a breakfast meeting with the youth parliamentary caucus, WALPE said a legislative framework providing for a 50% quota was necessary.
If we're demanding a quota system for young people, right, let's reflect and look at the women's quota system to say, so far, what have they achieved in Parliament? For over many years, we have introduced the women's quota system in Parliament. What have they achieved as the women's quota in Parliament? Mm-hmm. Also, look at the youth quota now. Now we have the youth quota. Are they vocal in Parliament? You have young MPs in Parliament who went there under the quota system. Are they vocal in Parliament? Are they speaking of the youth issues? Again, I think it goes back to the issue of political parties. Mm-hmm. When it comes to their primary elections or their selection processes and so on, do they field young people there? Do they put young people at the forefront before we demand to the government? Do political parties do these things in their own congress to say, want to elect a president in the congress, I nominate a young person to contest in this presidential elections in terms of party congresses? Do those things now, or just demand from the government? And also reflect and look at what have women in parliament done so far after introducing the women's quota. Let's go to our first speaker there this morning. Good morning to you, KK.
Good morning. It's important to consider the development of people and equipping them along for them to serve efficiently in whatever role, especially roles that have to do with or that concern the generality of Zimbabweans. So, institutions like Parliament should be, in anyone's career, the last lap. I think they should be the last lap, because in your development, you have deployed yourself in such a manner that you've gained the necessary experience to be able to attend issues of public interest, in a more effective and more efficient way. And I'm looking at a time when we finally get, as Zimbabweans, when we finally get the dynamics of power right, because as it speaks, we are paying for a parliament, we are paying for parliamentarians, which is not of any help to us is from where I stand. I mean, looking at the dynamics of power in Zimbabwe. But I think we should have a strategy and a path that equips youth from their inception in their career from the get-go right up to a point where they can now serve, or they've matured enough to serve in public institutions. I'm not saying that the composition of Parliament should strictly be of people that have gained the necessary experience and have developed, but for us to now be pushing it into a quota system, it might then deprive us of our best foot forward. It should be a competitive market where we value people depending on what they can offer, and what necessary experience they've acquired. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much for that.
Good morning to you, Tsebang.
It's a good morning to you, Nonhlanhla. So we have what is called a national youth policy in Zimbabwe. So it has various strategies, and one of the strategies centers around youth participation and governance. So what was bothering me is the 50%. To say, where is this 50% coming from? What informs the 50%? What is it that we have currently before we go to 50%? So the National Youth Policy talks about a 25% youth quota when it comes to social programs, economic programs, participation in governance and politics. So what then also bothered me is, how then did we come to have 10 seats in parliament? What formula was used? Was the 25% used, giving us an answer of 10 seats? That's questionable. Secondly, of the 25% quota gazetted or clearly prescribed in the National Youth Policy, now that we are clamoring for 50%, have we achieved the 25%? One of the challenges that I note in Zimbabwe is we are good at just throwing percentages. But when you sit back and say, what informs this? What mechanism, what formula has been used to come up with this? Even the 25% prescribed in the National Youth Policy, it's not clear what brought about the 25%. But looking at Parliament, because this is broad, when we talk of government, we do not only limit ourselves to parliamentary positions. We also have to look at positions within government, like what Brighton was also saying, ministerial positions, positions to do with permanent secretaries, directors of departments, cascading down to the lowest level. So, what is the percentage like? There mustn't be interest only when it comes to parliament, but there must also be interest when it comes to government positions. So my view is that I don't think we have achieved the 25% for us to be talking about a 50% quota. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Zebang, for that. Quite interesting what you are saying there. Good morning to you, native son of Bulawayo.
When we talk about the 50% quota in government positions, one of the problems that we have to note is that our problems do not emanate from lack of participation of youth in matters of governance, because at the end of the day, we have a system that actually allocate government position in according to what I will call comradeship. When I'm to say that in order for you to get a government position, it is never even based on merit. It is mostly based on, personal interest that we are seeing. And that is the main problem before we even talk about the 50% quota in 50% quota of the youth in government. Why is it so? Because at the end of the day, what you are going to have is a 50% quota of the youth. But if that 50% quota of the youth doesn't even bring anything, or that 50% quota of the youth is being controlled by the very same people who are giving out these positions in comradeship, then that 50% is just as good as useless.
Well, thank you, Native Son.
Good morning to you, Miss Mhlongo.
Good morning, everyone. I believe everything we do that concerns youth comes from the basis of education and the culture as well. Looking at education, I would love to think that maybe Zimbabwe has done really well in equipping our children with intellectual ability. Most of the people who come from Zimbabwe, even when they come over to any country, they are able to survive and get good jobs, and most of the time they're really, really good at what they do. But then it comes to, again, the education part of it is, it becomes not very, very good when we look at the how the youth are able to use their critical thinking, or how we as Zimbabweans are able to use our critical thinking, because I believe that's one area where we have failed as Zimbabweans. It's about how do we critique situations so that we are able to move forward, so that they benefit us all. And then also the culture. The culture says, when an adult says something, you take it. And that then cascades down to our politics. You know, the youth are there, they participate in politics. We see them busy chasing people and beating up people because they've been told by an adult to do so. They don't question anything. So really, for us now to move on to say we want the 50%, what is the 50% going to achieve? Are they going to bring in new ideas? Are they going to critique situations? Because if they are going to critique situations, they should have started it already at grassroots. What we're seeing at grassroots is youths who are running after anyone who opposes what their adult leaders say. So I think as Zimbabwe, we need to go back to the drawing board about the youth, also about the women. Is it when women go up, is it their voice that we hear, or we hear the voice of a man behind them? So women who have been given ministries, women who are being used to carry out jobs, dirty jobs, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Mhlongo, for that contribution.
Let's wrap up the space this morning on a Friday morning space with Pritchard. Good morning to you, Pritchard.
Good morning, Bfect. How are you? My first submission is age cannot be a determinant of who is in parliament. We have had the youth in parliament since time immemorial, but their contribution has been little to none. As early as 2002, we had the likes of Tafadzwa Msekiwa, Hope Msavaya Gumbo. Even this one also, Nchamisa, Lenmo Judah Jongwe, they were in parliament. But let's take stock of what the youth did when they went into parliament that time. Did they contribute anything that is meaningful? During the government of national unity, we had the youth, but what did they do that benefited the youth or the citizens at large? These are some of the questions that we're supposed to be asking each other right now. In 2018, with the generational consensus, if we are to pull out Hansards from 2018 to 2023 and look at how those we pushed for during the generational consensus, saying that they are the young people that are going to represent us, and look at their contributions. Some of them, the only time they feature in the Hansard is when they were being told to withdraw the statement Mpava, when they were singing Mpava towards other political actors, and they're not contributing anything. So at the end of the day, it's supposed to be about merit. Okay, 2018 might be far. Let's go to the current answers and see what those 10 youth quota MPs have contributed in parliament. Have they pushed any motion in parliament, or they are just silent? So at the end of the day, we might push, we need 50% youth quota. It's nonsense. We want merit. Let's go into the field and fight. The ground might be disadvantageous because the old Madalas will use their financial muscle. But as long as the youth quota in Zimbabwe is as it is, it's going to be ceremonial and people are going to be whipped into line to conform to what other people want. That's why you see ever since the introduction of the youth quota, of the women's quota, the women participation in active politics has actually been reduced since 2013 to date. And they are enjoying it. Why? Because they know that they will control those they give power. I remember there was a time I hosted some of the youth quota MPs. They had to run away from the spaces because they could not contribute and respond to simple questions that are affecting the youth. Prove to us that you can lead. Prove to us that you are well versed in terms of law and making law, and you know the oversight role. We're not going anywhere. And as long as the youth are controlled by political narratives and are told what to do with political parties that do not have ideology, political parties that are centered on personality cults, political parties that have got political regalia with faces of people and names of people, we are going to be suffering as a mass.
Yeah, we've come to the end of the show for this Friday. For myself, Bright Ngube.
And Nonhlanhla Mapigwa, it's bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. For feedback, you can contact us on 263-777-470017. Don't forget to follow and like our social media pages.